Love him or hate him, Donald Trump is making good on his campaign promise to cut wasteful government spending and bureaucracy, putting Elon Musk in charge of the newly formed DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Elon and crew have been hard at work. Their website claims to have already saved taxpayers $55 billion. Of course, some of that controversially because nobody wants their projects defunded or shut down. The Democrats are trying to block DOGE with lawsuits and new laws and public criticism. But in typical Elon Musk style 4D chess, he took an idea that somebody posted on X to the president, that idea giving some of the DOGE money back to the people. And Trump agreed, saying that they're considering using 20% of the savings to pay down the national debt and giving another 20% of it directly to Americans in what is being called a DOGE dividend. And it's kind of brilliant. Quiet the haters while you're also increasing the approval rating for DOGE and watching that skyrocket. And at the same time, making it not a good look for Democrats to keep fighting DOGE, which wants to give the money back. And in doing that, you're going to stimulate the economy. So will there be another stimulus rally in the stock market? And which stocks are at risk of being defunded by DOGE? Today on Dumb Money, the winners and losers. We're going to reveal our DOGE dividend stock trades.
This is Dumb Money Live.
Hey there, Dave here along with Chris and Jordan. We are Dumb Money. Welcome to Dumb Money Live. Quick reminder to smash the like button for the almighty YouTube algorithm and the algorithm of whatever platform you're on right now. Chris, Jordan, we've already seen some big moves on stocks related to government spending when the White House announced the Pentagon needs to plan to cut the defense budget by 8% annually for the next 5 years. We saw Palantir stock immediately drop 20%. It has been coming back, and we can talk more about that stock specifically in a minute. But big picture here, what does a DOGE dividend look like? Does it trigger another stimulus rally?
Well, I'll tell you what a DOGE dividend looks like. So if we actually trust the $55 billion claim in savings, which I think is dubious at best, that if you divide the 20% promised dividend among 120 million taxpayers, you're talking like $90.
I'm glad someone did the math on that.
So the math ain't mathin'. If you want to get into the four figures, and the low four figures, you've got to get to $1 trillion in cuts, and I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Well, wasn't Elon's whole plan $2 trillion in cuts, though? So if we get
so if he gets there,
Elon's...
then the math then turns to about a $2,000 dividend per taxpayer, which would be significant. But I mean, that's a pretty big ask, especially with the tax plan that they're looking to pass.
I thought it gets up to 5,000 at $2 trillion.
No,
it's 5,000.
About $2,000, $2,500, depending on the. That's just an estimation on the number of taxpayers. So if there's 120 million taxpayers, then no, it's like $2,500 top.
And I was trying to find where that $5,000 number came from. It didn't come from Elon, I don't believe. It didn't come from Trump. Trump said 20%. But I think people did the rough math. And who knows? Number of Americans or number of taxpayers or number of tax filers, because a joint return would be a single tax return. Like there's a lot of different numbers.
It's complicated. So, it's just rough math, but let's say it's 60 million. At that point, it'd take 2 trillion to get to 5,000.
Yep. Yeah. And it could have been households. I think maybe 5,000 was per.
But that would take, that would literally take 2 trillion in cuts, and the 55 billion seems inflated anyways. So I don't know. Maybe they get there.
So you could look at this a couple different ways. One, who would benefit under a DOGE dividend, which is kind of seems like it's likely to happen, but it might be much smaller than people anticipate. You have to go back to the last time we had, government money, and just, you can't overthink it, right? So all right, let's just say this. We can debate how people would spend their money differently this time, but as investors, what actually matters is how the market thinks they're going to spend their money. And the market is going to go back to last time and front run the same exact stocks and sectors that benefited from the last government handout. So initially, it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what everyone else thinks. So you have to go back and you have to trade the same exact stocks as last time. So what benefited the last time? Crypto, agreed?
Yep.
Yeah, Bitcoin would be the biggest winner, I think.
Agreed. Bitcoin was the biggest winner.
If it happens.
But not just Bitcoin. This time around, you're going to have Bitcoin plus meme stuff and other crypto junk, right? And who benefits the most from that? Robinhood, right? So like
Yes.
Robinhood would absolutely
Ooh,
be a
yeah,
winner.
hood.
In fact, the one thing, do you guys remember the one thing we learned with the stimmy checks from 2020 or 21 was that the majority of stimmy money actually went to pay off people's savings and to invest, right? So it went into people's investment accounts.
Yep.
The obvious beneficiary here has to be Robinhood and crypto. And beyond that, probably just wherever the loose money goes, right? Is it travel and clothing and just stuff, right? Just everything's going to pump, so don't overthink it. You just get a short window of pump out of this if it happens. But I don't even think it matters if it happens. If you start getting conversation around the fact that it's likely to happen, the market will trade up those sectors and stocks. So you just have to be prepared mentally, right? But that's the stimmy that might or might not happen. What we know is going to happen is continued talk. Or we agree that we probably have 2 to 3 more months of heavy Doge conversation. Does that sound
Yeah.
about right? Didn't
Yeah.
Elon say he was going to spend 4 months on this project? Right,
Well,
4 months.
I think there's a definite end date, and it is just it's a few months. It's not like a year-long project.
Okay, so we know that there's a few months left of this whole Doge. Let's slash budget from every area of government. Where do we think the juice is left? Like where people have already traded down what defense stocks, right?
Well,
Do you know
specifically
all the
Palantir.
mess?
I don't think defense stocks are that.
Yeah, the other defense stocks I look at weren't really affected.
Yeah.
Some of them had already been in a downswing. But I didn't
But do
see
you know
if
a
you
who got
look
big
at
crushed
drop
the
in
most
anything
from
except
yeah,
for
like if you look at
Palantir, which doesn't make any sense to me.
yeah, if you look at the ITA, which is the aerospace and defense ETF, I mean it's off its highs, but it's not. I mean, I wouldn't call it down.
You
And
know
did
who
you
got
see a big drop on the day that that 8% cut was announced,
but who gets
or plan
punished
for an
the
8%
worst?
cut was announced?
Who gets punished the worst here? Who generates the most amount of BS money from government overspending are the consultants. We know that, right?
Hmm.
Those are the people that have really crushed it the last 2 decades from government overspend, waste, the consultants. Booz Allen. Booz Allen is at the
Mm.
top of that list. How much money has Booz Allen made from government waste the last 2 decades? And then take a look at their stock right now. Like people are onto this, right? Like Booz Allen has got to be one of the the
Yeah,
most negatively impacted.
I don't
If
have a good
we
way to show charts here today, but they
look at that, look
definitely
at that,
took a drop this
BAH,
past week.
BAH. They topped out at like 186 in October. They're trading at 109 right now, down like 40%
Well, yeah,
over the last few
this
months.
is a 2-year chart on the
Yeah, I have a feeling those guys are generating a lot of revenue, and they will be first to get cut. But there's another trade that I find super interesting. Have you seen the conversation around taxes? Now, we have to discuss whether or not this is actually going to happen or if it could theoretically happen. But this concept around kind of dramatically changing the tax code, it's starting to get a lot more traction here in the last few weeks. Do you think there's any sort of real possibility that they could dramatically move to more of a flat tax or just kind of move away from the traditional tax code? Because that's where all the conversation's going around Doge the last couple of weeks, right? And if
yeah,
that
on the
happens,
firing of 6,000 IRS agents, and if you can make IRS more efficient and an
But don't we
online
have
thing where
bills already for income tax codes that they're working on? So I don't know why they would be working on IRS tax codes if they're planning on getting rid of income tax or switching to a flat tax. I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know.
But I mean, the talk
man.
about
Whether it's
doing,
a
I mean,
flat
just
tax or
theoretically,
it's a
right? This is the
dramatically
talk about
simplified
using
tax
tariffs
system.
would just be like a consumption tax, right? So tariffs, by going directly to tariffs and not using income tax, would be a consumption tax, which would disincentivize consumption, which I don't know if is a good idea.
I
I'm just
love
at a
it.
loss on this one. I do think it could benefit into it because aren't they getting rid of some of these free tax online tax return companies?
That's what I was going to say. And by the way, I don't love necessarily the tariff concept, but the concept of moving to more of a some type of consumption
Tax instead of
oriented
an
tax.
income tax.
By the way, Jordan, that would take like a decade. You can't just do something like that.
No, I mean it would
immediately.
be yeah, I mean it would be a disaster.
Yeah, it's not. It's being trialed in multiple countries around the world right now, but it has to be phased in over time. I've been a believer in that system for a long time and have always wished that we would trial it here. It doesn't matter if it happens immediately. If there is serious talk around it, just the conversation and the threat of it could be disastrous for companies like Intuit with TurboTax,
the
right?
TurboTax people, yeah.
How about HR Block, right? Let's see how they're doing. I'm not saying to like make these trades now, but you absolutely have to be prepared to make them if the conversation starts to escalate. These could be absolutely killer trades going into any type of flat tax or any type of consumption tax scenario that would dramatically reduce the degree of flexibility in the tax code would destroy these companies.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And by the way, it's the perception of how damaging that would be.
Yeah, from what I see right now is that I don't think taxes are getting more simple. I think they're getting less simple. So you need something to help you. And the biggest push was to get rid of these, free e-filers, which I think would be huge for Intuit because then they get, they're $30 a pop on more taxpayers.
Well, even Intuit though has a free product.
Well, right now, right, but that's a government subsidized product, right? And that's what they're pushing back on. So they're pushing back on these government subsidized free filing services, and that's one of Intuit has that, right? And so now if they could charge $10 for that service, like, oh, it's no longer free, but now it's $10, and it's more revenue.
Chris, I think your mic's off again. You froze a little bit, and now I don't think you're working.
Chris is gone. Maybe he could write. He should get a tablet and just write what he wants to say.
Yeah, do what I have to do, and I'm showing stock close. Just show your phone. I guess I don't know. Maybe you need to reboot again. Plug in the internet. There he goes. All right, now it's Dave and Jordan show.
Yeah.
So yeah, Intuit was not on my radar for this, and I hadn't really, other than the IRS preparing to fire more people, I hadn't really been following the simplification of the tax code rumors.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really on my radar.
Yeah.
But for me, it comes down to the stocks that you're expecting. Oh, there is Chris on his phone.
It works.
Yeah.
We've got phone. It's like
low tech. Now we can see look at the studio there.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I was just saying I really had not been following the rumored simplification of the tax code, so that was not at all on my radar. But I was more focused on individuals putting money in the brokerage account, and Robinhood was at the top of my list, and Bitcoin is at the top of my list. And I think it's funny how we never talk about what we're going to do other than the title of the show. We never talk about our stock picks, but it's funny that we came prepared with the same two things.
I was with, by the way, a lot of crypto guys and girls in Austin this week. for robot meetings, and there were just a lot of crypto investors down there. Probably some of the most prominent that I've ever been around, and I was shocked to hear that they were really negative on the crypto sector right now. I didn't realize how. But then again, sentiment sometimes it means the opposite of what you think it means, right? So the fact that that industry is so negative on itself, perhaps that maybe is a longer term positive for the sector. I don't know. But I do feel and by the way, when we look at stocks that have kind of gotten ahead of themselves here, Palantir comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
I think we discussed Palantir because Palantir was probably, would you agree, maybe one of our largest topics of 2024, late 2024. One of the most I would say Palantir was one of the most controversial, high conviction trade picks that we've done in years on our show, because everybody told us that we were crazy and way too late at $30 a share to be talking about Palantir.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, guys, I did not expect Palantir to do what it did as quickly as it did. I was happy to have had it.
Did. Yeah. No,
But-
I felt like we were a little bit late, only because Palantir was just hard to wrap my head around what they even did. And once I really understood that, it was a no-brainer to buy the stock, and I'm glad I did when I did. And it's off, but I don't really understand the Pentagon spending cut. Doesn't really seem like the reaction. I feel like that reaction was way overdone, because
it seemed concentrated in the Palantir, which was odd.
Palantir basically the thing that's going to be optimizing for the Pentagon, help them figure out better cost savings, ways to cut across the board? I feel like the software is the one thing you need to keep paying for.
Guys, okay, let's just talk about Palantir for a second. No one has been more bullish on Palantir than me the last year. The stock, everyone told me the stock was already overpriced at $30 when I went all in on it, has 4x since then over the course of a few months. So there's no such thing as an overreaction to the downside when you have a stock that the whole world thought was already way over bought, then 4x's. It makes absolute sense that a stock like that would overcorrect on the downside. I don't monitor price. You know that. I could care less about price. I don't track price, but I did sell 1/2 of my Palantir at close to the top. Why did I sell half at close to the top? Not because the price had 4x'd, but because my entire thesis around Palantir is that it was misunderstood and underappreciated in terms of where they were in their cycle. And that is just no longer the case right now, right? It's much more appreciated than it was when we were talking about it last year. So as a social arb investor, when the rest of the world kind of catches up to my thesis, I start to exit. And I exited half of my Palantir. I feel good about that. Now, I also believe, as you know, that Palantir is a company that it could theoretically continue to surprise us for years, if not the next decade. And I don't want to be completely out of it, because it's also a longer term social arb trade. So I still own half, but I sold half because certainly people are more aware of that thesis today than they were last year. And they appreciate Palantir and their positioning in the marketplace of this new AI world meaningfully more than they did a year ago when we were talking about it and investing aggressively in it. So I sold all my options a while ago, but I sold half of my equity stake as well here. But that said, I still have the other half, and quite honestly, I'll probably keep it for a very long time. So that's my Palantir trade. I don't necessarily want to trade Palantir based on DOGE, though.
Yeah.
I don't know that I necessarily want to do that.
So when we talk DOGE, we have to factor in Tesla. What does Elon's involvement in DOGE do to Tesla stock? We've seen a huge run up between the election and the inauguration, and then since the inauguration, we've seen Tesla being punished possibly, several of the analysts are saying that it's, Elon's lost focus at Tesla is the reason. What do you think?
Well, we've seen some of the European numbers for EV sales drop, specifically Tesla sales. So I'm sure that plays into it somehow. It also had a big run up. Why did the stock go down?
I could care less about automotive sales for Tesla, but to be fair, a lot of that drop in Europe due to Tesla on Tesla cars was a kind of a timing issue, right? With the release window of their new vehicles in Tesla. I heard that's beginning to turn around. So I think it was a timing issue on the release of the Y, I believe, right?
The new Model Y.
The new
Yeah.
Y.
So it's kind of unfair. Also, I was with some Tesla guys in Austin this week. Similar timing issue in China, that due to the Chinese calendar this year being off, there was, there's a few weeks when no one purchases, anything over there. And that disrupted the calendar and the buying window. I heard that in the last 1 to 2 weeks that the Tesla numbers appear to be up meaningfully in China as well. So perhaps there's a bit of a tailwind now, both in China and in Europe for the automotive division, which nobody should really care about when it comes to Tesla. But they do. No, they do care. They do care. That's the problem. They do. That's the issue, is that Tesla is still majority automotive driven. I don't know why, but it is. So that stuff actually matters right now. And then you also have the tailwind on Tesla of FSD this summer with the launch in Austin. Do we think the launch in Austin is actually going to be meaningful? I think it depends on whether it's fully autonomous or if there's someone in the vehicle, right? If there's someone in the vehicle, which I think there probably will be, right? It's probably not as interesting as everyone's hyping it up to be, if that's the case in Austin.
Is it a robo-taxi trial, or is it FSD in your own car without being monitored to make sure you're paying attention?
No. It's from what I understand. I thought it was robo-taxi, but is there going to be assisted?
I thought it was FSD in your own car, being untethered from the nagging screen that makes you pay attention.
We'll see. We have that, and then we also have the introduction of the new cheaper model. To what extent will that model be a new form factor, or to what extent will that model just be an iteration, of the three, right? And that will kind of dictate the level of excitement around this new cheaper Tesla. Again, a lot of the movement in the stock is still focused around autos. I don't believe that it should be, but it is. So as a Tesla even if you're trying to time your entry point, you have to pay attention to autos because it's still what's driving the stock right now.
Yep.
I've been saying for a while, I think at some point in the next 9 to 12 months, that will change. And I think it will change, but it's not today. So I have a Tesla position that I tend to lever up and lever down on a weekly basis. So,
and you're still primarily in Tesla options, right?
Yeah, I'm just doing stupid stuff. I'm levering up, levering down all the time. Sometimes I make the right decision, sometimes I make the wrong decision. I'm not the know-it-all when it comes to Tesla timing. So people always ask me, I'm like, don't ask me. I'm in the same boat as you. I have this really strong thesis related to Optimus that is not that relevant today. And I think it becomes relevant at some point in the near to midterm future, but it's not today.
So these in the money calls that you keep repurchasing, just pushing out the date and changing the strike.
So that's like insurance, because I know I want to be aggressively in Tesla at some point in the future. And if some other driver of Tesla stock significantly moves the price in the interim, that would be that would upset me, right? So I kind of want to make sure that I have at least some percent of the position I ultimately want to have locked in. That's what I'm doing today. So it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but I'm trying to protect the position I eventually want in Tesla, right? So I'm just trying to do that through options right now.
Yeah, just in case they dropped a video of Optimus the way
It's
Figure just
not.
dropped their
It,
video
it's not.
of
No, it's not. It's not for a video of Optimus. It's because because I would rather wait till the video drops to get in for Optimus. It's about people trading up FSD or trading up the new vehicles or trading up the other stuff that I don't care about. Uh, I just want to have some level of exposure in Tesla just in case. But my big trade will come on when I think the market more appreciates Optimus.
And what do you think about the new Figure video that dropped with two robots working together to unload groceries and put things away based on seeing an object, figuring out where they thought it belonged without any prompting?
I thought it was impressive, but I thought it was also a reminder that people are getting overhyped on expectations for what humanoids are actually going to be doing in the next 12 to 18 months. I keep reminding everyone that we're not even at 1.0 right now. Like we don't even have our 1.0 humanoids right now. You think they have them at Tesla and Figure. They don't. This is not the 1.0 yet. I
Yeah, in
don't know
my
why.
mind. So, I mean, so he's got, Brett has reasons for releasing videos like that, and the biggest reason is that he's about to raise a round.
That they're raising they're raising rounds, and listen,
And so he's getting
Elon.
people excited about what the robots can do, and I think that that's perfectly legitimate because they are doing these things. They're doing a great job, but they're displaying they're kind of playing to the strengths of what they've built so far, and I think that's fine. But he's got to sell the round.
We are at pilot stage in the humanoid
Yeah.
sector. Period. End stop. Like, we're at pilot stage, guys. We are not at commercial stage humanoids. There are a lot of people out there that think that we're about to start commercializing humanoids because they hear Elon talking about these production numbers. Quite honestly, Figure AI is talking about production numbers. That's fine. I'm not sold on that yet. And I love both of those companies. I love Optimus. I love Figure. I obviously love Aptronic. But we are not at commercial stage humanoids yet. I'm sorry. We're just not there. I don't care what any of these CEOs say. And it doesn't bother me one bit. We're going to have 12 to 18 months of intensive pilot stage work at real companies around the world where the rubber is going to meet the road, and we are going to identify problems with these humanoid platforms. Whether it's, like I said many times, it could be joints overheating, it could be wires fraying, it could be connectors that they
You got to
have
figure those
issues
things
with.
out, but you also have to prove value, right? And so if they can do those things and figure out how to prove the value, then those are the steps.
Jordan, that's right. We also have to ramp up speed. We have to prove durability. We have to prove that these machines can actually operate 20, 22 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end. That has not been proven yet. And we might have to tweak the actual form factor of these humanoids and various components and architectures and software and in the tech stack
Well,
in
also
order to
just
get
like the
there.
implementation plans of these things and try to figure out, okay, do we have to have, a Figure AI employee on site at all times, or do we have to have this or that? I mean, I hate to say that, but you've got to figure all of these things out on how to make these things operational.
Listen, none of this stuff is negative to me. None of it's a negative. It's
No,
all expected.
Yeah.
It's all,
This is business.
I
It's
just
just going to be
don't.
an exciting 12 to 18 to 24 months. I think that we're going to see a lot of progress. We're not going to see them walking in our house, but we're going to see a lot of progress.
If people have reasonable expectations, this will be the most exciting time in humanoids the next 2 years. I just think that there are some people in the market and on X that are getting overexcited, and their expectations are starting to become unreasonable for the sector. And believe me, I'm, as you know, I'm engaged with these humanoids on a regular basis and the engineers that are working on them. The progress is phenomenal. Like, the future is super bright. but you just can't go from 0 to 100 in an industry sector like this, where you're having to put bots on manufacturing lines for the very first time. There's so much variability in how these humanoids work. This is not traditional automated machinery, right? There's way too much variability, which, by the way, is why people love these things, right? Because they have they could eventually work in really unstructured environments and do anything. By the way, like, when you think about the timeline for humanoids, just think structured to unstructured, right? The first jobs they're going to be doing are going to be in highly structured environments where there'll be minimal movement. And then we're going to, over time, transition to more unstructured environments, still in commercial and industrial settings. When people are talking about home humanoids, forget about home humanoids. We're not going to see viable home humanoids for years because that environment is just way too unstructured. We're not there yet, and it doesn't matter.
Well, and also,
it doesn't matter.
it's just such a better, I mean, in my mind, the better use case is in industry, right? You can deploy far more with, fewer touch points if you deploy them into industry.
Yeah, it makes
If
I'm
you're
not
deploying them into
financially
homes,
too.
it's just a big, it's a mess.
I think
Although I will say,
I think the
spend
better
any amount to get one, but
Jordan, I think the best use case actually is at home eventually when we can get there, for numerous reasons, but especially for healthcare and for home aids. I think that becomes a multi-trillion-dollar industry
Problem is they creep me
home.
out, so I can't have a creep me out robot in my house.
They won't creep you out. They absolutely. You're looking at today's robots.
Having a phone with you at all times.
Jordan, they won't creep you out. I think the form factor that
creep
ends
out
up
my dog. I've got my dog here right now. They would totally creep out my dog.
Your dog will love will love these humanoids. I think the form factor that ends up landing in the home will be a very kind of positive, non-creepy form factor. I've seen what some of these companies are doing and what they're thinking about years out for the home, and I think you will love it. I think your dog will love it. And by the way, it will be the most game-changing moment, period, that we've had in consumer tech. Far more game-changing than the smartphone. That's coming. It's not coming this year or next year. 5 years from now, 8 years from now, we'll start to see kind of the first home bots that are meaningfully productive in some homes. You just have to be patient. Right now, it's all about commercial and industrial, and even there, pilots, guys. The next 18 months is pilots. I'm sorry, we're not going to see any type of scalable commercial humanoids over the next so many months, and that should not be a negative for anyone in this sector. Okay, so I'm off that. So I'm off that soapbox because I think X has been getting overexcited on this stuff, and I want to slow people down. But yeah, for Optimus, I think we see it by the end of the year. I think by the end of this year, we see enough with Optimus that starts to get the story and the narrative for Tesla starts to transition away from cars towards FSD and Optimus at some point later this year.
Yep.
So,
all right. Anything else?
No, I will say this. I've been almost exclusively focused the last week on a few different retail stocks, and I found a couple that I am super excited about. By the way, Corsair, that trade still continues to move, but I have a couple retail stocks. I'll just give a little hint. One of them has been punished recently unfairly, and they seem to be having a great quarter. There are a bunch of retail stocks that are coming out with earnings in early March, and that really has been my focus this last week. I'm almost done with my research, and I want to share it with you guys, and I want to share it with the community, which I will do in our Discord. Dummoney.
So head to dummoney.tv/Discord. It's absolutely free. Get an invite there and join us there.
But on our show next week, Dave, can we do it? Can we
stocks
next week? Because I think there are some really good opportunities right now. And I know everyone's so focused on tech and everyone's hyped on Palantir and all these other tech stocks. Like, people are not paying attention to some of the other sectors because they're so focused on the noise of government right now, and Wall Street and AI and tech. And I think there's never been a time when people are so overlooking some of the, I don't want to call them boring sectors, but I don't know, less trendy sectors that are outside of this disruptive AI. And I think that means there's more opportunity for traders. I made a couple trades this last week. One was on Garmin, killed it on Garmin. And I had another trade that was short on Fiverr that crushed it this last week. Obviously, the Corsair trade was one of the biggest trades I've made in a while. And no one's talking about this stuff right now. No one's looking at it because they're all focused on HIMS and like Palantir and just a handful of stocks that everyone's talking about.
In the meantime, you can double your money on a boring stock like Corsair.
Yeah, that was a great investment.
I thank you, Dumb Money community, for tipping us off to that trade that we ended up running with and studying. Hopefully a lot of the community members did their own homework and came to the same conclusion that we did. Okay, guys. So next week, retail, I'm just finishing my research, and I think I got a couple big ones to discuss.
We'll do a show early next week, and maybe Tuesday, our normal date and time. So we'll see you there. And until then, we're Dumb Money. Have a good